Lesson 11-2, Equivalent Ratios. By the end of today's lesson, you will be able to write and use equivalent ratios. Make sure you have your piece of paper and pencil ready so you can work right along with me. So for equivalent ratios, they have the same value and they can be written as equivalent fractions. To write an equivalent ratio, you first write the given ratio as a fraction, then multiply or divide both the numerator and the denominator by the same non-zero number. Remember, by doing that, if it's the same non-zero number, it's equal to 1, and it doesn't change the value. And number 3, you express the result as a fraction. Let's take a look at those steps using an example. Here we have a picture of circle and squares. So our ratio of circles to squares is 5 to 15. So that would be 5 to 15. So to write that as an equivalent ratio, we first need to write this as a ratio. So we write that as 5 to 15 as a fraction. Our next step would be to multiply or divide the numerator and denominator by the same non-zero number. Looking at this, I can tell I can reduce it down, so I'm choosing to divide. Divided by 5 on both of them. Once I do that, that equals 5 divided by 5 is 1, 15 divided by 5 is 3, so 1/3. So an equivalent fraction of 5 to 15 would be 1/3. I could have also multiplied them, 5 over 15, and I could have chosen to divide them both by 2, or I'm sorry, multiply them both by 2, and that would also give me an equivalent fraction. So 5 times 2 is 10, 15 times 2 is 30. So another equivalent fraction would be 10/30ths. Remember, the key here is to use the same non-zero number for the numerator and the denominator, because 2 over 2, well, that just equals 1, as well as 5 over 5, that equals 1. So if we're multiplying or dividing by 1, we know we're not really changing the value of the number because we're multiplying or dividing by 1. We can also use equivalent ratios to solve problems. So in this problem it says, at one table, Sue Ann can place 6 chairs. How many chairs can she place at 3 tables? So here we would write equivalent ratios. We know that at one table, she can put 6 chairs. So we want to know at 3 tables, how many chairs can she put? So I'll just put in chairs because we don't know yet. So now we take a look at this and we set this up as a fraction. So I'm going to put 1 over 6 equals 3 over, we're not sure yet. So I take a look here and I say, what do I multiply or divide to get to from this 1 here to the 3 here? I know that I would multiply by 3. So if I multiply the top by 3, I know I have to multiply my bottom by 3 as well. So 1 times 3 equals 3, 6 times 3 equals 18. So we would be able to put 18 chairs at the table. Let's take a look at another ratio to write an equivalent ratio for. So we have 1 to 8. Well, our first step is to write that as a fraction. Now, I can either multiply or divide to do an equivalent fraction. Dividing 1 divided by something isn't going to work so well, so here I'm going to multiply. An easy number to always use, if they're asking you to give an equivalent ratio, just multiply by 2. That's super easy. So I'm going to multiply my numerator and my denominator both by 2. So I get 1 times 2 equals 2. And 8 times 2 equals 16. Okay, I want you now to think of another equivalent ratio for 1/8. Go ahead and pause this and work it out. Okay, for me, I'm going to try times 3. It's easiest if you just keep going up the number line, and it just works out super easy instead of thinking, I'm going to multiply it by these giant numbers. So 1 times 3 equals 3, 8 times 3 equals 24. So that would be another equivalent fraction for 1/8. Now, what happens if you multiply it by 4? I would get 4 32nds. So equivalent fractions for 1/8 are 2/6, 3/24, 4 32nds. You can keep going also. So in today's lesson, when you're asked to do equivalent fractions or equivalent ratios, just make sure that you're just multiplying both the numerator and denominator by the same number, and that's how you'll come up with the correct answer. Go ahead and rewatch any parts of today's video that you need to, and go over your notes before heading off on today's math.